Hey, what's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and it's time for me to run down the best black metal albums of the 2010s with a little help from the guys over at Metal Forge Reviews.
What is up, guys? Brandon and Ben here from Metal Forge Reviews. Thank you to Flight of Icarus for having us on the show. Our channel focuses on the best of the metal underground in the form of top lists, interviews, and best albums of Bandcamp. There's a ton of killer metal out there, and it's our job to find it and bring it to you. We cover a lot of doom and black metal, so if that's your thing, definitely check out our videos. We make a ton of Spotify playlists as well, so you can easily check that stuff out. If you haven't subbed to Metal Trenches yet, do it now. We'll wait. We're super excited to do this video because in 2010 to 2019, you start to see a lot of innovation in the black metal genre. So there's some great stuff to cover. This list was crazy difficult to make, but we're really happy with our picks. Let's get to it.
My first pick is Taake with 2011's Noregs Vaapen. So I'm kicking off this list with the oldest of my own picks and arguably the one that sticks closest to the original black metal playbook. Taake has been putting out records since 1999, catching the tail end of Norway's original second wave. He's put out many albums since then, but I'd argue that this is easily one of his best. Marrying the frozen melodies of his tremolo lines with an almost more punk and rock approach to the songwriting this time around, it's the perfect unholy union that makes for tracks that are even more electrifying when performed live. The album is excellent from start to finish, but we can scarcely move on without mentioning its one major rule-breaking contribution to the genre in Myr's absolutely ripping banjo solo. Bet you didn't see that coming.
The first on my list is Alcest, Écailles Lune. I'm going to butcher all of the pronunciations here, so don't beat up on me too much. Released March 26, 2010 on Prophecy Productions, Alcest are easily one of the most important bands to me. And it goes without saying that Écailles Lune is also up there for some of the best black metal records of all time for me. Nerds will say, actually, they're black gays, so get it right. Alcest are innovative, and they started to add in the post/atmospheric vibes into the black metal genre in the best way. France-based Alcest embraced dreamlike melodies and world building to convey their dark and dreary music. Ever since 2007's Souvenirs d'un Autre Monde came out, I've been a huge fan of this band. But it was their 2010 release of Écailles Lune that absolutely blew my mind, that you can mix delay-drenched clean guitars and lead guitar work with black metal. The album artwork is some of the most beautiful artwork that I've ever seen in black metal, and it encapsulates a dream world that Neige explores throughout the music. Here's a clip from one of my favorite songs, PERCEES de LUMIERE.
So just to start this off, I wanted to say that my criteria for these picks was really the amount of listens, the timelessness of the album, and the kind of front to back just perfection as far as cohesion, pacing, and just a number of amazing songs. First on my list, I'm going to start off with one of my favorite albums of probably this entire time period, Nechochwen. The two-man blackened neo-folk metal band from West Virginia takes their inspiration from Native American history, mythology, and traditions. Their albums often feature traditional instruments, languages, and interpretations of poems from tribes across the Americas, which is really cool. They caught my attention with their Ascetic to the Otherworld record, which is a beautiful record, but really only gave us a small taste of their metal capabilities. In 2015, they released Heart of Akamon, which absolutely blew me away. This band, given all their talent and songwriting abilities, could have easily released something with some pretentious amount of time, like a 2-hour-long CD with a 22-page color booklet and blah, blah, blah. But instead, they decided to get right to the point, give the audience what they want, and they created a 44-minute masterpiece that just blew me away. I'm telling you, this is one of my favorite black metal albums, probably of all time, definitely of the time period. The melodies and riffs are infectious, the storytelling is absolutely masterful, and the atmosphere leaves you feeling like you're in a smoky longhouse, listening to ancient warriors and shamans as they tell their stories that have been passed down through generations. Heart of Akamon, I'm going to say it again, in case you weren't listening, is easily one of my favorites of this decade, maybe of all time. This is their magnum opus, and I am very eager to see what the future holds for Nechochwen.
Next up, I have Schammasch with 2016's Triangle. For most bands, a double album is a daunting undertaking at which even many of the best have failed. Enter these Swiss underground legends and their over 1 hour and 40-minute triple album Triangle. Especially as a reviewer with limited time to dedicate to any one record, I was initially overwhelmed and quite skeptical, but let me tell you that this is one of the most engrossing, atmospheric experiences I've ever had. And for my money, their finest work to date. Listening to this album from start to finish is like tumbling into a dark abyss with the sounds of life only becoming ever more distant in the ambient final third. Give the track Metanoia a spin to get you started.
The next one on my list is Panopticon, Autumn Eternal. This was released on October 15th, 2015 on Nordvis Production. I cannot make a black metal list of the 2010 decade without mentioning Panopticon. Autumn Eternal is the final album in the trilogy with the album Kentucky. The release of Kentucky took the metal world by storm with the folk/bluegrass influences in black metal, and Roads to the North was the sophomore release of the trilogy. But it was Autumn Eternal, the last of the bunch, that absolutely blew me away. There's no doubt that Austin Lund is one of the better innovators in the black metal genre. One of the things I love about Austin as an artist is the clear motivation to include introspection, spirituality, and environmental worship into black metal. The organic production is amazing too, and I love the honesty in the recordings where the drums have mistakes in them and there's obvious tempo fluctuations throughout the songs. But that stuff doesn't matter. The songs are superbly written, and it would be ruined with that machine-like modern approach to music nowadays. Here's a clip from Into the North Woods.
Winterfelleth is my next pick, and if you can't tell, I really enjoy my black metal fused with folk. Black metal reminds me of the cold, snow, and forests, and these motifs match beautifully with folk music, especially old school Americana or Celtic folk music. Winterfelleth does an Anglo-Saxon inspired spin on their black metal, and it is absolutely marvelous. The Divination of Antiquity beat out a lot of the other bands on my contender list simply due to the fact that I could listen to this album for days and just never get sick of it. It is filled with soaring melodic phrases and haunting tonal patterns, interspersed with merciless tremolo picking and double kick drumming. Listening to Winterfelleth makes me think of standing watch in an ancient castle tower, looking out at the rolling green hills that your sire has sworn to tend to. The band conveys such a sincere attitude towards the recognition and acclaim of their lore. It's just marvelous all around. Back in May, Brandon and I had the opportunity to sit down with Chris Naughton, the lead singer and songwriter of the band. This was a total treat, and we were trying really hard not to be completely starstruck. But he was super cool, super laid back, and we had a fantastic interview with Chris. Definitely check that interview out because we talked about a lot of things that were intriguing us about the band that we so admire.
All right, next up we have Cult of Fire with 2013's Ascetic Meditation of Death. Pretty much anything Infernal Vlad puts out ends up being absolute mystical magic. But this was the album that started me down that particular rabbit hole. Dripping with Vlad's ongoing fascination in Eastern religious imagery and mysticism, and even complete with a few moments of gorgeous sitar, Ascetic Meditation of Death is a deeply introspective and meditative black metal opus that is just as fit for a particularly grim yoga session as donning corpse paint, or pointy hoods in this case, and hitting the stage. If my last album was a tumble into the abyss, this one will leave you floating amongst the stars.
Last one on my list is Mgla with Hearts Towards None. This was released on February 28th, 2012. Definitely one of the more hyped black metal bands of the 2010 decade. Most people discovered and obsessed over Mgla when Exercises in Futility came out. While I do dig that record, it was 2012's release of With Hearts Towards None that I constantly came back to. Polish-based Mgla created something spectacular with this album, and it's interesting to me because the riffs are so unbelievably simple. This record is spellbinding, dark, evil, and so melodic that there's earworms all over the record. Their love for repetition and atmosphere is something that, in my opinion, they haven't really recreated as well as they did on With Hearts Towards None. To this day, track 3 is one of the best black metal songs of 2010 for me. Here's a clip from that song, 3.
And finally for me is Les Discrets, Ariettes, oubliées. This album is a bit different from the other two that I chose, but it's a perfect one to kind of round out what I love about black metal in the 21st century. It falls more into the category of like a post-rock, black gaze sort of fusion, with scattered moments of tremolo picking, washy leads coated with reverb, and the very, very occasional blast beat. It is this constant tugging of beautiful sorrow and accelerating anguish that makes me feel like I'm not the only person trapped in my own head from time to time, despite all the lyrics being in French. This band gets overshadowed quite a bit by their French counterparts, Alcest, and for the most part, I think that's totally appropriate because Alcest is definitely more locked into their sound. But the first time I heard this record, I was stunned and just could not stop listening to it. Playing this record makes me feel like I'm living in a black and white cinema noir where it's constantly raining outside my door and no one ever calls, visits, or acknowledges my existence. I suffocate on my own loneliness and am constantly reminded of my dreaded human existence. This is a fantastic album, though, and while it may seem bleak, it's really not entirely devoid of hope, like some post-black metal bands tend to be. So definitely check it out.
And last but not least, we have Imperial Triumphant with 2018's Vile Luxury. If I chose just one band to exemplify the massive strides that this once by-the-book genre has taken in the last decade, it would be Imperial Triumphant. This is an album that I also included in my top 100 albums of the decade overall, and for good reason. It's absolutely phenomenal. From the violent mechanical maelstrom of swarming opulence to the lonely street saxophone of Cosmopolis, Vile Luxury is a stunning portrait of New York City, warts and all. A stunning jazz-infused black metal opus that is every bit as monolithic as the city from whence it was born. And that's it, y'all. Those are our picks for the 10 best black metal albums of the 2010s. But now it's your turn. Down in the comments, let us know what you feel like are the best black metal albums of the last decade. And if you want to hear more on this topic, you can actually check out the podcast I did with Chris a while back on our favorite black metal bands of the last decade. Likewise, if you want to check out some of my favorite starter black metal albums overall, you can check out my Black Metal for Dummies list. And just in general, stick around because there's plenty more videos on the channel. I've also got tier lists. I have a black metal tier list. But yeah, plenty of reasons to, again, subscribe if you have not already, and again, to Metal Forge reviews as well, because they are putting out excellent content. In the description, you can find links to our social media where you can follow us, the email newsletter I send out personally every Friday, metaltrenches.com for even more reviews and content, and our Patreon and Subscribe Star if you want to take that extra jump to becoming a full-on supporter. Even just $1 a month gets you early access to content and helps me keep this train a-rolling. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.